We have no idea what they're doing. So they say they're maintaining what the city's doing, but do we really know that? They could have gone on the same schedule that we were on, but they kind of stuck it right in our eye that we can do whatever we want. So if they were to ever address that, I think that would be helpful to all of us.
They had to follow the same pay equity guidelines as the rest of the city.
Yeah, but they set up their own schedule.
All of the scales and everything were set up as a result of that wage study that we did back in, I think it was 2016 is when that was all came about, and we did all that stuff. We put together, looked at all the job descriptions. We hired Clarity and Hood to go through all that stuff. And from that, all the wage scales were put in place. And obviously, the scales, as they were presented to the council, they actually even showed the library employee scales, but also the library board had to approve those scales.
And did, though.
And did.
Okay, any more discussion? Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Steve, Don, and council. And Dan.
So, just a question, we still haven't really established for the library going forward that is a given? I mean, that's just an additional every year, or?
Well, yeah, that's, I guess, this budget, the way it was presented, and that 188, the way that note was for the council to consider going forward, if they're going to do the 2018 and the 2019, continuing that on. In a sense, if that's what the council's going to do, then basically it'll be...
Through 2020?
Right.
Through 2020 per that budget.
2020, yeah. And again, just because you're approving the 188 and you're the hard part of the discussion also has to be too, the MOU we get from the state, which tells us this is how much you have to give them, is based on, a lot of factors. One of them, what we gave under the MOU that maybe for the prior years, but what we've kind of been doing is, I think really what's kind of been happening over the last few years is we got to a point where we gave 140. And then after that, to I think the great extent was just approving additional funds as they needed, so to speak. And so, if I remember it all correctly, wages have been the main thing that's kind of causing increases each year. But giving them 188 this year isn't going to commit the city council to giving them, just like any year, isn't going to commit you to giving them any more than 117, other than the fact that in approving this, you'd say that it would make sense that obviously the wages you're committing to from years past and years going forward, unless you say basically that we're not going to commit to continuing to give the 2018 and the 2019 adjustments. I don't know if you want to break that out or what you want to do with that, but I think the motion based on what you guys were talking about is approving this budget, taking out those two items.
Correct.
Which, if that's approving going forward with the 18 and the 19, continuing to pay those two amounts for the cost of living, then that's what it is. Unless anybody wants to have a discussion on that.
Okay, let's move on. Okay. Let's go to item number 14, Planning Commission report. Kevin.
So last night we had a planning commission meeting. We've been talking about the northwest area where Colony is going and beyond. We don't really get anywhere. We go nowhere. So what came out of last night's meeting is we as the planning commission want to know, if you remember back probably about the time that Wayne Johnson was here, or the county was talking about placing a county garage facility out on 108.
Yep.
That kind of drove the discussion of whether we should make that corridor along 108 commercial, zone it commercial. It's currently zoned R2. Since that discussion, we have found out, or kind of through information given to us by Commissioner Johnson, that more likely than not, there is not going to be a county facility out in that area. So the question is that we want us, it's kind of weird saying us and we, but the question that the Planning Commission wants the council to think about is, do we still want to rezone that commercial along 108, since more likely than not, the county garage facility is not going out there. So that's the first thing we want the council to consider, to think about. The next that we want the council to consider or to think about is, we want a specific, really a specific number or a definitive commitment as to what the city council or the city has for extending infrastructure in that northwest area. We know the dollar figure is $1,000 a foot past where we're going now, and that's per numbers given to us by Bob Schliemann. And we're, is there a possibility of, in the budget, designating so much per year for infrastructure? A number that was thrown out just for easy math last night was $50,000 a year. So then in 5 years, we would have $250,000, which would, assuming $1,000 a foot stays the number, we would have 250 feet of additional infrastructure.
Paid for.
Paid for. So, and that's something to consider. The third thing we want, and this is more of a want, we want to schedule a joint Planning Commission City Council work session for September 30th at 5 p.m., which is a Monday night. And at that time, we can discuss these items that I, thought. And it,
We could discuss all this at that time?
yes, I mean, we can discuss the items that I had brought up. We really just kind of want to, we as the Planning Commission want to know what the council, what the city's wishes are for that area, whether it be platting the whole thing, whether it be platting 20 spots, whether it be, but along with that, there's a money, there's a dollar figure that's associated with all of that. And I don't, I'm not the financial guy, so I don't, is there bonding that's included in that or whatever, but I don't know.
This would be conducted as a planning commission meeting?
No, it would be a work session,
Okay.
a joint council planning commission work session, talking about, brainstorming about what we're looking for. And through the discussion last night, we really saw this as a first step in the process of community meetings, trying to figure out the vision of what we want Pelican to look like in the next 5 years, 15, 25, and beyond years. In talking to Don, we had, there's a comprehensive plan that maybe has to be looked into changing, and there's a series. This isn't going to be a one and done type of thing. It's going to. We see this as a jumping off point for community involvement in figuring out what we want Pelican Rapids to look like.
Who is moderating this meeting?
The ayes have it.
Just a simple work session,
I don't know
conversation,
that
basically.
But you need
Well, you're the mayor.
but
Probably, as the representative to the commission and sitting on both, probably myself.
Just so we know ahead of time, who's in charge.
I know, because I've been to some of the planning commission meetings when these guys started working together, and I know they're spinning their wheels, and I know they're struggling, and they keep asking the question, what is our function, and what are we supposed to be doing? And I've given them that information, I've given them the city code about what their function is, and it really comes down to the comprehensive plan. That's kind of the overall vision, and that was put together by a visioning process that the community was a huge part in back in 2002, 2003, and then from that, the Planning Commission worked on the first comprehensive plan, and it took a couple, 2-3 years for that all to transpire. Well, every Planning Commission since that comprehensive plan, and prior to that, actually, that Planning Commission at that time then took that comprehensive plan, and they looked and read through it, were familiar with it. Of course, they were a large part of the process of developing it, and they knew that that comp plan was their guide to what it is that they work on, because that comp plan was developed, it was approved by the city council, but it was developed through all these community meetings with the community to get that visioning process done. And so every planning commission since that time has always used that as their guide on what to work on. Housing study is another basically resource for them to look at.
Is that being used now?
What? The comp plan? Well, they've looked at it, we've pointed things out to them, but I think in my mind, they're getting hung up on this dollar thing, like they have to have the dollar commitment. Most cities out there, their planning commissions and planners, they plan, take the comprehensive plan, they plan for things like this Northwest housing development out there. The idea is to take a look at what they think, based on the comprehensive plan, the housing studies, whatever, what would be the best plat out there that would be in the best interest of the city. They do all the discussion, all the homework, working with the consultant to do that, not even thinking about or caring what the cost is going to be, but what do we want that to look like? And I know they want the city council's input, I know they want the community's input. But I don't think they should be getting hung up on the cost that prevents them from doing anything, because if you're thinking about waiting until you've got dollars because you're saving for it, or getting some type of a council commitment on the dollars that will be put towards something, you will never get anything planned out. It's about thinking about what's good for the community, planning it out, and then figuring out what do you need to make that happen. And that's where the dollars come in, the grants come in, those type of financial resources that you got to tap into to have it happen. But don't sit and think that you have to have that figured out, or even if you're going to come up with $1 million worth of infrastructure out there, before you start with the simple, what should it look like out there? And that's what they're getting hung up on. They're thinking that they need all this education and experience, and they need to be city planners and everything to do this. There isn't a planning commission in the city of Pelican Rapids that's ever been that trained and experienced at doing it. And they've all done a great job at figuring out what the city needs. And so maybe what the work session, I think, would kind of be helpful, maybe for these guys. But I think if they're so stuck on it's got to be the city council and it's got to be the community telling them what to do, then maybe it's time we do another visioning process. And maybe then, out of that visioning process, we do another. The comprehensive plan is probably 6 years old now. I think it was updated in 2012. It's got to be redone. These guys, if they're going to spin their wheels on this, just doing a plat, which was kind of started for them, how are they ever going to get through a comprehensive plan process? Because that's going to take a commitment of many meetings. Part of that involves public hearings on certain aspects of it. That's a long, drawn-out process. Okay. So, but my point is, maybe the discussion at this work session should be, should we go back to looking at doing a community visioning process, take that information and look at updating the comprehensive plan, and by then, hopefully, everybody will know what we're going to do.
We can talk about that at that meeting.